Hello, this is Ryanne Davis, and this is a submission on a new horse that I'm working with named Guiness. He is a 15-year-old Appaloosa gelding that has been showing in many of the Appaloosa Horse Club shows, doing Western pleasure and other Western equestrian activities within the Appaloosa Horse Club. So now at 15, his owner was getting ready to retire him, which I thought was sort of sad, because I've seen horses live to 40, so 15 to me is not a horse that should be retiring. In fact, 15 is the age at which a horse, should be coming sort of into its prime, So she's sort of taking a chance on Art2Ride, and so I'm working with this guy, starting to see how Art2Ride can help him. So this is actually my first session with him, and I am just beginning with lunging and just sort of evaluating how he moves, seeing what he can already do, and then sort of seeing what where he's ready to improve and how I can sort of help him to do that. So you can see here that he is very, very stiff, can hardly move, really. He has a very, very slow, in all three gaits you'll see he's very slow. This horse's owner, her vet had recommended to do hock injections because he was acting kind of lame, there's no doubt that he probably is lame in many regards, but he can still walk, so so he can still learn to use his body better. So that's I kind of discouraged her from doing hock injections right now, to sort of give me a chance to see if we can get him to use his body a bit better, and therefore avoid having to get injections altogether, which she was pretty happy about, because they're quite expensive to get your horse injected. But this is her prize show horse, and so she would do anything for him. But she's got other younger horses that she's also training to start showing now that she's thinking of retiring this one. So she, I've been very fortunate that she's giving me a chance to see what I can do with this horse. So here you can see that he can barely move, and part of that is training. The sort of Western pleasure horses are trained to go very slowly. They're trained to sort of have this lower headset, and then kind of dangle their heads down, and then sort of not go anywhere. So you can see that that's exactly what he's doing right here. And so, of course, I'm not going to all at once ask him to start being more active all of a sudden. That's going to freak him out. So, I have to realize that it's been 15 years of him learning how to do this. And so, I can't just right away start asking for him to just move totally different, all of a sudden. And so here I'm just kind of warming him up, just seeing if I can just get a rhythm, and just see if, I can just tap him a little bit with my whip every now and then, get a little bit more of a step from him. But I'm not expecting anything at all. In fact, I'm pleased that this horse is just going anywhere at all, because he's in a lot of pain. You can see he's very mincy with his steps, and so I don't want to push him for something he's incapable of. That's just going to we're going to end up fighting. He's just going to end up in more pain. So I asked for canter. So instead of sort of asking for a bigger trot, I'm asking him just to go up a gait so that I can get a little bit more momentum out of him, and then I'll go back to the trot. and see if that helps the trot to sort of start swinging a little bit more. But you can see his canter is very sort of broken up. It's like he kind of falls apart. You know, he goes back to the trot. He's kind of like sort of digging his shoulders into the ground and not really, you know, he's barely putting his legs in canter formation. He's certainly not going anywhere. He's not using his back. You can see his hips rise up in the air while his shoulders dig down into the ground. So, you know, this canter is not over this horse's back. He's not reaching under with his hind legs at all. In fact, they're falling out behind him. And so, you know, again, the canter here is just to get a little bit more energy from him, rather than you know, sort of this is a good canter for him to be doing. So I just ask for a few circles and just sort of see how it is, and then come back to the trot. And you can see he's a little bit more mobile in the trot. But again, you can see that his shoulders are still sort of digging into the ground, and the hind legs are sort of trailing behind him rather than coming up underneath him. And so, you know, again, I knew that that's not going to, you know, just suddenly improve his trot all of a sudden. Because, you know, again, a lot of it is physically he can't really swing in the trot, and the other thing is that psychologically he can't really swing in the trot because, again, he's been taught, you know, that if he goes anywhere he's going to be punished. So so again, I have to keep all of that in mind while I'm working with this horse, and just sort of see where he's at. So, you know, I'm keeping it pretty short and sweet, and not really asking him for much. I'm not even making too much contact on the lunge line also, because, you know, if I start treating him like a more developed horse, where I am going to have more contact, and I am going to be, you know, encouraging him on with the whip and all these sorts of things that I would do with a more developed horse, you know, he's not going to be able to do it, and it's going to end up, you know, working against us rather than helping him to improve. And a lot of horses will sort of fight that, but this guy, you know, he's sort of one of those silent sufferers. He's not going to pin his ears, he's not going to buck, he's not going to, you know, do any of these sorts of behaviors that horses do, you know, swish his tail, any of that stuff, to show you that he's in pain. He's just sort of going to keep going and hope that he's making you happy, you know, with what he's doing. So he's a very, very quiet horse, very willing, no sort of behavioral issues. You know, he sort of stuffs that all down, and just kind of does what he can. He's a very willing horse. So, you know, I don't want to start asking him for all this and then, you know, sort of sour his personality by pushing him too hard. So, again, I just switch directions here and just sort of walk with him a little bit, see if I can get him to take a little bit of a larger step, but, you know, just a little bit. I know that he's not going to be able to do much. Sometimes the walk can be the most difficult for some horses, because, you know, when each of their legs is stiff, you know, and then they start walking, it's a 4-beat gait, and so then each leg sort of has to pull its own weight, so to speak, and so that can be difficult sometimes for some horses that are just beginning. So a lot of times I won't really push the walk, and instead I'll ask for trot, and then that way, at least, you know, it can be, you know, even though there is the added speed, sometimes because the diagonal pairs share the weight of the horse at the same time, sometimes that can be a little bit of an easier sort of load for the horse, because like with this horse, you'll see, you know, his trot is, it's not much faster than his walk, so the speed isn't really working against him in this case. So I think here in a moment I'm going to ask for the trot, and again, I'm not, usually I would keep a very consistent contact with a more developed horse, like I said, but this horse is, I think it'd be a little bit overwhelming to try to, sort of do everything all at once for him. So, I contact him a little bit on the line and see if he responds, and then, sort of let go and give him a little bit of room, and, I'm not gonna try to establish contact too much here on the lunge line. It's a little bit more difficult with one rein than it is, doing work in hand, or, with the saddle where you have two reins, or under saddle. I'm just trying to see how he moves, what he can do, and sort of evaluate from there. So, with this horse, sort of an interesting thing about working with a Western trained horse, the sort of Western pleasure type, is that they tend to be punished if their head is too high, right? But then they also tend to be punished if their head is too low. So this horse, he has sort of a range in which he knows that it's acceptable to put his head, and that's sort of between the wither and the knee. And if he goes any lower than the knee, he won't. He's very reluctant to go any lower than the knee because he knows he'll be punished, and he's very reluctant again to go above the wither because he knows he'll be punished. So he sort of keeps his head sort of in that range, and so encouraging him to actually go deeper than that, to stick his sort of neck out further, is really difficult for him psychologically. So I have to be very very patient with this guy as we're first beginning here, and so I'm learning that here today while I'm lunging him, just seeing where he's sort of willing to sort of stick his neck out to, because the beginning horse, the new horse to all of this, is there's a lot sort of to learn about the horse, and there's sort of a lot for the horse to learn. So they can be really the most challenging horse to work with. It's very easy to ride a horse that has been doing Art2Ride for several years, and they've already sort of gone through all of this the sort of beginning process where they have to sort of reconfigure everything, both physically and psychologically. So that's sort of the reason that I'm showing this horse here today for my update, rather than showing what I'm doing with Ariel, because what I'm starting to learn, there's a couple of new horses that I've started to work with, and I'm realizing that really working with the new horse is sort of the most difficult and sort of the biggest sort of test of your ability as a trainer, or of my ability as a trainer. And so I feel like showing what I'm doing with new horses is going to sort of showcase what I can do better than working with a horse that's more developed, because everything's so sort of easy at that point. Every ride with Ariel every day is just very, simple and subtle, and so again, it's very easy as a trainer, as a rider, to ride a horse that's very well developed and has been doing this for a few years. And so I'm showing this horse here today just to show what sort of the most difficult thing that I can do, which is ride a sort of virgin horse. And so I've started to realize that, I'll get on Ariel and I just have this, easy breezy ride, and then I'll get on a horse that's new to this, and it's like I have to work so hard. And so that's just, it's interesting to me, because, it being a sort of experienced now rider, I just feel like it's so much easier for sort of to be on an experienced horse, and so it can be frustrating to work with a new horse, because you already know sort of what horses are capable of, how they're capable of moving, how it feels when the back comes underneath you, how it feels when they're active, when they're stretched all the way down, and all of that, and how it feels to be able to steer the horse and do lateral work and sort of work on things and sort of have more fun, rather than it sort of being work. With the new horse, you really have to sort of work and put in a lot of effort and concentration. So anyway, so that's why I'm showing you this horse here today. And plus we had a really big blizzard over the last month, and so I haven't been able to ride, and so I haven't been able to capture any video of Ariel. So anyway, so back to Guinness. You can see we finished lunging and kept it kind of short and sweet, and walk, trot, canter both directions, and now I get on and ride, and you can see he can't go anywhere. He certainly cannot sort of lift my weight, and you can see his walk is even slower with me on top of him. So I don't actually have a whip here today, and I did that strategically because I don't want to force this horse. He's a very easy horse because he's so willing, and because he's so slow, it's very easy to want to sort of make him work. So I didn't want to tempt myself with a whip to sort of start relying on that to get things out of him that he's incapable of. So instead of sort of doing anything in the walk, because I know I can't really get anywhere in the walk, I went ahead and started trotting and see sort of where I can get to in the trot instead. And again, sometimes, like I said, it can be easier for some horses to trot in the beginning, because that load is sort of shared on the diagonal pairs. So I just, of course I'm posting to the trot and not sitting the trot at any point, and when he lifts his head, I just raise my hands and follow him, and lower when he lowers. And so you can see he actually does get to a bit of a better stretch under saddle, and that's because I've got two reins, and so the contact is a little bit more consistent. It's a little bit more clear and firm with two reins than it can be sometimes with just a lunge line, just one rein. So I'm able to sort of get the concept of contact a little bit better under saddle, and so that's why I didn't really focus too much on it on the lunge line. So you can see here that I really have to work to post, but his trot really isn't that bad. I mean, for the very first ride I've ever had on this horse, and for him, this is really going somewhere for this horse. He normally trots much slower than this, being a Western pleasure type of horse. And so you can see though that he doesn't, you know how I like to ride my horses with their noses in the sand, so he doesn't want to sort of stretch all the way down like I like, because he's quite worried about doing that. So you can see how he sort of gets stuck right at his knees a little bit. And so there's sort of a psychological barrier right there, that I'm sort of, trying to guide him towards breaking through that, because ultimately I do want, I love a horse with the nose in the sand. So ultimately that's what I'm looking for. But I know that I sort of have to encourage that out of him. I know that he's not going to just go there right away. But you can see that, his top line is very underdeveloped. His neck is sort of very thin, and the underside of the neck is much more developed than the top line. And you can sort of see how thin his neck is. It doesn't have that sort of robust, sort of top line look to it like many of our Art2Ride horses begin to look like after a year or two of doing this. I like to keep it very short and sweet, and sort of ask him for a little bit of trot, see what we can get to, and then I'm just coming back to the walk, and again, not asking him to be all that active, although, he wants to kind of stop, and so I do have to use my leg a little bit just to keep him sort of going. But you can see he's been very well trained to not go anywhere. So again, I give him a little bit of break, sort of let him catch his breath, and then ask for the trot again. So you can see here that he does sort of use himself a little bit better in the trot than he does in the walk. His neck gets a little bit longer. He starts to kind of swing a little bit. You can see his tail switching from side to side, his hips kind of swinging a little bit there. So the trot is a little bit more effective for him today. And so we're probably going to spend quite a bit of time whenever I am on him riding in the trot rather than in the walk. So you can see he starts to kind of stick his nose out there a little bit. So I ask for a canter, see what we can get to there, get a little bit more energy out of him. And you can see he has that sort of Western pleasure, sort of lopey thing. It's certainly not a canter. You can see how sort of stunted it is and sort of laborious, and it looks like he's going to stop at any moment. And I have to say, as a rider, riding a canter like this is very awkward. To me, it just, after riding canter, where a horse is over its back, this is uncomfortable. It feels like I'm digging into his back all the time. I can't really sit, I can't get comfortable in my seat. I can't feel like I can sort of sit down, and I think you can see I'm sort of all over the saddle. I think a lot of that has to do, first of all, he's not lifting his back because he can't physically. But also, the canter, he's not really, he hasn't been taught to actually canter and actually go anywhere. So he sort of hesitates in every step. He sort of stops himself from going. And so that sort of makes the jolt, it makes it a little bit more jolting than, it otherwise would be if he was just sort of going and flowing forward. So it's quite awkward to ride, and I think obviously the Western pleasure people, when they're riding a canter, it's much slower than what I was just doing. So they're not all over their seat like I am necessarily. But you can see that canter did sort of improve his trot a little bit. He's gotten a little bit of swing starting to happen there to the extent that he can. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, anything perfect. I just want to see a little bit of improvement, and see sort of what we can get to. So again, I sort of let him catch his breath, reward him by coming back to this nice, slow, ambling walk. And again, I'm not going to push the walk because I know I can just feel how difficult it is for him to carry me at the walk. So I can tell right away that he's going to be one of these horses where the walk is going to be the most difficult. Not every horse finds the walk. Some horses you have to walk them, for a year before you can even begin in the trot. So so every horse is sort of different. You have to adjust and sort of see where every horse is. So with this one, you just really can't ask him on very much in the walk because he just simply can't do it. But he tries. He certainly, the further out he sticks his neck, the better sort of his hind end is able to step up under him. So again, I'm just trying to focus on following him into the contact and sort of teach him that it's okay to really stick that nose out and down like he's starting to do here. You can see, so I really like this, even though, and you can see his walk gets a little bit more active if you compare it to just a few moments ago. He starts to kind of go a little bit of somewhere in this walk here. So that's really what the beautiful thing that I love to sort of observe about Art2Ride is that the once the horses sort of get into position, a nice long and low position, and they really go there, everything just starts to work. It just starts to flow, like kind of all on its own. The body wants to move properly. It's not something you have to sort of force your horse to do or make them do it, or nature just sort of takes over, and the body just knows what to do and how to continue moving the horse forward. And so that's sort of the wonderful thing, is that if you're just sort of patient, the horse will kind of do what they're supposed to do on their own. But sometimes the hardest part is just the patience, because sort of what you want them to do, and sort of what it feels like. And so when they're not doing it, it's like, come on, you can do this. So, when he starts to move a little bit like this, you can see he's starting to just swing those legs under just a little bit further than he was before. Those are really rewarding moments, because, the horse is sort of getting somewhere, and it's amazing to me how instantaneously that all happens when the horse finally sort of releases the neck all the way out and down. The hind end just starts to swing under to the ability that it can, and sometimes you don't even have to ask for it. The horse just offers what they can do, and that's what's amazing to me about Art2Ride. So you can see here that this trot is, it's not bad. Sort of the nice thing about working with the previously Western pleasure trained horse is that they do tend to have a habit of having a lower sort of head and neck set, and so they already sort of have some sort of idea about stretching. It's not totally foreign to them with a rider on their back, and so all you have to really do is just ask for more, for a deeper stretch, so that that can allow for their body to get into position to start swinging under with the hind end. So you can see here that he's really he's starting to try a little bit, starting to swing a little bit. There he goes. And you can see the further out he gets his neck, the better under his hind end is able to step under him. So, and you can see I have to really work hard to post on this horse. He's not lifting his back up at all. So I really have to do all of the posting, and I have to, maintain the contact on the rein, so my hands are constantly moving. My seat doesn't look fantastic because, I really have to keep myself balanced up there. And so again, that's my point about being a trainer. It's you really have to be sort of a better rider on horses that are green to Art2Ride than you do with horses that are really well developed. Those horses kind of make you look good because they can lift you, and it's just very easy to sit on them and ride them and steer them and all that sort of stuff because they're able to get over their backs, and so they can lift you, so you don't really have to work as hard. I mean, you do have to be fit, of course, to ride a well-developed horse, but you really have to be fit to ride an underdeveloped horse. So that's just something that I've been learning as a trainer, working with new horses. I get on Ariel, and she just lifts me right up in the trot, and then I get on, a sort of virgin horse, and it's like, oh gosh, I have to do a lot of work. I'm much more sore after riding the virgin horse than I am riding a horse like Ariel or Talia, or another horse that I've developed much more. So that's been very interesting for me as a trainer, and it's really forced me, working with new horses is really what forces me to be a better rider, to be a better trainer, to be more patient, and to really sort of fine-tune my own skills and my own physicality in order to be sort of the best that I can be for the horse, because it's easy, when we're green and we are new to Art2Ride, we have our own imbalances and bad habits, bad physical habits that we do, and psychological habits. So So, we sort of have to train ourselves as well as the horse at the same time. And so it's sometimes it's easier to already have gone through that sort of learning curve with other horses, and then then you can sort of start to become or be more like your best with new horses, and really help them. At that point you're able to help them because you're pretty stable yourself as the trainer. So this is getting quite good for this horse. Like, we're starting to kind of go a little bit of somewhere. Again, it's not gonna all just come together all at once, and he's not gonna have this amazingly active trot, but he's starting to improve, and that's really again what I'm looking for. He's starting to swing in his hips a little bit. I can see his tail swishing from side to side. He's getting deeper in his stretch, and really starting to stick his neck out there. And so that's what I'm looking for. He's nice and rhythmic. He's starting to become a little bit more even in his strides. The strides that his front legs take versus his back legs are starting to become a little bit more even. And not quite there, but again, it's improving. It's becoming better. So again, that's what I'm looking to see. And so I'm quite pleased with this first ride for this horse. I'm certainly not going to, so I asked him for a little bit of canter. He counter canters here. So I have to correct that. But I just do that to ask for a little bit of energy. And you can see, once again, this direction is a little bit worse than the other direction in terms of the canter. He's a lot less balanced, and you can see he sort of is digging into the ground a little bit more in this direction. We're not able to make as large of a circle in this direction, and you can see my seat is really I was trying to figure out, like, should I be in a 2-point half seat? Should I sit? Should I what? Because again, it's very odd to ride his canter, his because he has that like Western lope, that like sort of broken down canter, but then I'm asking him to actually go, so it's like he's conflicted, his body's conflicted, and so then my seat is conflicted. It's like I don't know where to go on this horse. So you almost feel this sort of instinct to sort of post his canter. It's very odd. So you can see that this is just not pretty, and it's not I'm not really sure what to do. So I just try this for a few moments again, just to sort of get some energy going out of him, and then I'll return back to the trot. And so we don't do this for very long, but it's very interesting going. This is sort of the first Western pleasure horse that I've retrained, I guess. I'm rehabilitating, and so it's just interesting to notice this sort of different intricacies that pop up, because I've never felt a canter like that on even a hollow just horse that hasn't been Western pleasure trained. So and he's done quite well in the Western pleasure arena. So if I was a Western pleasure rider, I'm sure I would find this horse to be a pleasure to ride. But as a Art2Ride rider, I find this very, very uncomfortable, and that was a very sort of abrupt stop. You can see he starts to get tired after a while. So again, you have to be very patient and sort of understanding of the virgin horse, because they get tired very easily, and this is brand new to them. It's a lot of work for these new muscles to start to take over. So I ask him for a little bit more. And you can see he starts to kind of duck behind the vertical a little bit. He really starts to get tired. He can't quite swing like he was previously. So I just want to ask for just a little bit here. See if I can just get a little bit more. And so he was willing to go when I asked, and so that I want to reward that, because again, I don't want to push this horse too hard. I want to see where he's at, but I certainly do not want to overwhelm him, because as you can see, he's very, very stiff and uncomfortable, and I'm sure he's in a lot of pain, even though he doesn't express it. but you know, his body his movement sort of speaks for itself. You know, it's very laborious and sort of touchy. He's very like he doesn't want to go anywhere. So you know, I'm very aware he's not going to be able to carry my weight. So I'm certainly not going to ride this horse for a while. I'm going to do work in hand and lunging and lots of groundwork with him, just to allow him to develop a little bit more before I get back on and ask him to really sort of start carrying me and lifting me. So this ride is quite short. You can see he's really ready to stop. He's quite you know, winded, quite tired. Because again, this is new to him. You can see his neck is a bit longer than it was before, and once again, he really can't move. So I'm just asking him just a little bit with my legs. I don't have a whip here, but I just want to see if I can get, you know, just a little bit more out of him. See what he can do. And there he starts to activate a little bit more for himself. You know, of course, this is not the most active walk in the world, but you know, that's what when you first begin with a horse, you know, it sort of peaks out little by little at a time, and nothing just sort of happens all at once. So so you can see here where he's used to going in a circle, and I think I stop him up here near the camera. So anywho, that is my update for now, and I will share some work in hand with this horse coming up pretty soon. But again, we had a blizzard, so I couldn't film that. So I want to give him a little bit of a treat to let him know that was quite good for a previously Western pleasure horse. Good boy. So again, this is Ryanne Davis, and this is my submission for the Associate Trainer Program, and Guinness and I will see you next time.